Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to do a discussion video related to a book that I recently read and loved. The topic that book covered was true crime stories and why women seem to be so obsessed with them. True crime shows, podcasts, and books are all overwhelmingly consumed by women. Executives over at the Oxygen Network caught wind of this and in early 2017 decided to entirely rebrand as an exclusively true crime network. They now run these shows on a non-stop loop. They have a TV series called Snapped, all about women who lose control and kill their domestic partner. They have a new series called Killer Affair, which is all about love affairs that have gone violent. And then they run those non-stop reruns of Law & Order SVU and, of course, Dateline. Interest in true crime certainly isn't new, think Bonnie and Clyde, but it does seem that now, more than ever, people are obsessed with this genre. The Oxygen Network even runs a 3-day-long crime convention called CrimeCon, where attendees can go to panels about the latest crime-solving techniques. They can go to canine detection demonstrations, and they can buy themselves a t-shirt that says, basically a detective. The majority of people who buy tickets to this event, you guessed it, women. I have definitely noticed more and more people getting hyped about these types of stories. Just about everyone on my corner of the internet was totally invested in the Serial podcast, and the exact same thing for The Making of a Murderer on Netflix. And just three women that I know of within my office, binge listen to podcasts like this. I know one of them really likes My Favorite Murder. And while the Oxygen Network reacted to this trend, I've seen very few people question why we're seeing this notable spike in attraction to these grisly stories. But that is precisely the question that inspired Rachel Monroe to write her new book, Savage Appetites: 4 True Stories of Women, Crime, and Obsession, published this year, 2019, by Scribner. The book does exactly what the subtitle promises. It tells us 4 true stories, but in a very meta way, because these are technically true crime stories, but none of the women that she focuses on actually committed a crime with her own hands. These 4 ladies are connected to crime in entirely voluntary ways, and they each seem to attach themselves to a specific archetype of woman within a grander crime story. There's the detective, the victim, the defender, and the killer. So we're hearing about a woman who built crime scene miniatures to help bolster a police force, which were amazing in their detail, but spoke to the obsessive perfectionism that drove everyone crazy, including former HBI head J. Edgar Hoover. Then there's a woman who stumbled into her fascination with the Sharon Tate murders, which were committed by members of the Manson family, when she completely unknowingly started renting the guest house next to where the murders happened. She became so wrapped up in the story of these murders that she clawed her way into the Tate family. Then there's the story of a woman living in New York City who saw a documentary that literally changed her life. The subject of that film was a convicted murderer, part of the West Memphis Three, that she was convinced was innocent. The two struck up a written correspondence, fell in love, and then got married, after which she became the biggest advocate for his release. And finally, there is the story of a young woman who felt completely separated from society and so started living most of her life online. This unfortunately started feeding her innate sense of superiority over others, which translated into admiration posts for the Columbine killers, and eventually a plot to commit her own mass shooting. Each of these women display obsession, but the way they connect to their respective crime story is completely unique. Monroe basically argues that they got caught up in their crime stories because they identified so strongly with a specific archetype, and she goes into the psychology behind this. Several different times, I've heard the argument from psychologists that we have a tendency in our adult romantic relationships to set up situations that remind us of our childhood traumas, because there's something in our brains that wants to resolve that conflict that never got to be resolved back then. So if you grew up with an unstable parent, it is likely you will seek out someone unstable because you are still trying to fix that in your mind. I felt so many times throughout this book that we're seeing a similar kind of thing in the attraction women have to crime stories. That we as women are attracted to crime stories because we're trying to settle something within ourselves. And the archetype that we are most attracted to has everything to do with it. Because it's not just that we like one of these archetypes, it's that on some level we identify with it. I'll focus on only one in this video so that the other three can be uncharted territory for you when you go and read the book. So let's focus on the detective archetype and forget speaking in generalizations. Let's use me as a case study. I don't want this video to feel like I'm on the outside judging everyone who is attracted to true crime. Rachel Monroe does not do that in her book, and I'm not about to do that here. Because, just like her, I like these types of stories, and I've definitely felt judged over the years by society for liking them. Like there's got to be something dark and twisted inside my head to ever be attracted to something so dark. I've never believed that's the case, and I think knowing oneself is a really powerful tool. So, to give you a little bit of my history, I grew up obsessed with Harriet the Spy. I remember seeing the movie and then going to the grocery store with my mom, following people around the store, peering at them in between the shelving units and jotting down notes on my little dollar store notebook. Then I got older, and nothing could separate me from my CSI obsession. Is it a Thursday night? Don't you dare call me. I have a date with The Who and Greg the Lab Tech. So it's pretty clear that the detective archetype is the one that I most identify with. And the least likable person in this book, to me, was the crime scene miniaturist. She was such an awful, irritating perfectionist. But you know what they say about the people we detest most? They're typically the people who remind us most of ourselves. And that's the case here because, honey, I am a perfectionist to the highest degree. Ever wonder why these videos are so polished? It's because I refuse to put out anything that isn't entirely perfect. It's a lovely little brain itch I have that has everything to do with my background and thus my attraction to the detective archetype. To make things really personal, just for a second, I grew up in a situation where I felt that I had absolutely no control in my own life. I'm not trying to speak in hyperbole. I know a ton of people had much harder situations than me growing up. And I'm not going to go into any detail because of privacy reasons. But things weren't great a lot, and it felt like I could do absolutely nothing to change it. So those things I could control, the things I could make neat, the things I could figure out, and most importantly, have a say in, those things were heaven for me. So it makes total sense that for such a long time, my dream job was to be a forensic anthropologist. The women in this book take things to extremes, so they aren't meant to represent the typical woman who binges true crime content on the weekend. And while they are used as examples of the psychology behind why someone is attracted to a specific archetype, this book is far from clinical. It is personal, it is engaging, it is well researched, and it is necessarily critical. There are a lot of really good arguments against the true crime trend. I've heard a lot of people say that it can be really invasive, which I think is valid. It's true crime. These are real people, and having their business out there to be a story for everyone to consume is very likely to affect their lives in a way that they didn't necessarily sign up for. Rachel Monroe is in a really unique position in this book. She's been bitten by the crime bug at various points in her life, so she totally gets the appeal. But she's also fallen out of it, so she has a healthy dose of skepticism. She knows from firsthand experience that binging this type of content has the ability to make you feel full, but also empty at the exact same time, which is the way that she puts it. This book is extremely well written. She is so honest in it. And the whole time it has this great sense of curiosity because she's looking to understand these women, but also herself. If you're into true crime, but you're not interested in that type of deep introspection, or if you hate true crime and are looking for no explanation behind it, then this one probably isn't for you. But if you are fascinated by this fascination, or you're a true crime consumer looking to know yourself a little better, this book is completely worth your time. I am very interested to hear your thoughts on this topic, or about anything in general. You can put that either down in the comments section below, or you can find me on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles are in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.